Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR. And I'm your host, the counselor. And today we're going to be talking about the tears, the fears for the tears. Basically, we're talking about crying. And when I'm talking about crying, I'm talking about everybody. We got to drop that old traditional. Now, there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of pent up frustration, sadness, loneliness, hurt, men included. And one of the issues is that we are struggling to let some of this weight off our shoulder. We don't understand, many of us, that we have this thing inside of us, these emotions that just build and we become hardened and stiffened from it. And we're doing every kind of thing in our lives to get this tension out. And we don't understand, not just tension, all these emotions and these feelings and some of this stuff that's deep inside of us. We've been carrying that for so long. It's zapping our strength. It's made us hard. And it's not possible for some of us to release. Well, I'm going to tell you something. At some point, you might have to cry. You ever notice that some people, they be going to sleep and they have these emotions? And have you ever cried in your sleep? I mean, I have. I don't know if it's just about being a man or something, but I have to say that being a man, you don't just cry generally. You don't just cry in front of people. And if you do, you hear people go, "Oh, I've never seen you cry before. Oh, that's serious." Because the assumption is men aren't supposed to cry. And some women aren't supposed to cry either in front of their kids or in front of certain people. They're supposed to hold it together. Or if a man sees a woman crying, he don't know what to do with it. So what does he do? He just acts silly or, redirects the attention. He can't deal with it. So there's just so many elements to crying that I'm saying today I want to talk about letting it out, letting it flow, letting it go. I mean, even as a man, I'm going to tell you right now, when I've had to cry, I've cried. And it was such a relief. It was so heavy. And I was caught up with these post emotional feelings where I was embarrassed. Like after it, I was like, oh my goodness, like it was such a relief. It was so de-stressing that when I had to cope with it, the embarrassment hit me, but it was nothing in comparison to just having that blockage opened up, like just giving myself a break, an emotional stress relief. And I think that during these times, there's so much emotion and mental health and stress and all these things that are building up. And it's understand our children are having these problems. Now I'm trying to tell people that sometimes you got to cry. And you might not need a reason why. You just have to. Now, if you find yourself crying all the time, we got to talk about that. But I mean, there's some of you that just can't cry or don't know how to cry or don't think it's going to change or make your situation better if you cry. Is crying going to solve all your problems? No, it's not. But if you got something inside of you and something's hurting you or somebody hurt you or could have been years gone by, you deserve a cry, a good cry. And you know why? Because it's in us to cry. We got tears. And you can't have too much fear and be willing to release those tears. Because that fear is going to stop you. You got to be tough. You got to be strong. Well, it has nothing to do with being strong or tough. Sometimes you just have enough. And that's why you should cry. How long has it been since you last had a good, hard cry? Crying actually makes you feel better right away because it's your body's method of releasing stress. But if you've gone months or years without crying, it can be hard to remember how to start. Going to a quiet place, freeing yourself from distractions, and letting yourself deeply feel emotions will put you in the right state of mind. It really will. And there's techniques we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk how you can let those tears flow and let it go and still be yourself. No shame. right? And I mean it, letting them tears flow. See, find a good place to cry. Most people who have trouble letting themselves cry prefer to experience their emotions alone, away from others. It can be easier to let yourself truly experience your feelings when you aren't worried about what someone else is thinking. There's certainly nothing wrong with crying in front of others, but you might find it more relaxing to be by yourself at first. Your bedroom might be a good choice if it's private, if it's a quiet place. If your house has a lot of other people in it, try driving somewhere private so you can cry in the car. But make sure you feel well enough while driving there and back. Crying while driving can be dangerous, right? First of all, you can't see. Second of all, you're not gonna be 100, right? You're not gonna be 100. You're gonna be like distracted, or you're gonna have so much emotion. No, so just make sure you got yourself together. You can also cry in the shower. No one will hear you there. Being outside might help you free up your mind to process emotions. Look for a private spot in the park or on the beach. It's okay. Find your spot. Find your quiet place. Clear your head from distractions. Many people push their feelings aside and bury themselves in distractions to keep from crying. See, this technique is so effective that it can result in going months or years without crying. At the first sign of sadness, do you tend to turn on the TV and spend the evening laughing at your favorite show? Next time you start feeling down, resist that impulse and allow yourself to feel the emotion. It's the first step to having a good, hard cry. There are many other types of distractions. You might stay late at work every night, spend all your time going out instead of being alone, or read articles online until you fall asleep. Think about what you tend to do when you're not in the mood to feel emotional, and make the decision to stop and focus on your emotions. And I mean that. Think deeply about what's making you sad. Instead of letting your thoughts skip away to something less important, focus your mind on the emotions swirling around in your head. Just let yourself think through them instead of trying to push them away. If you're sad, think hard about the event that brought you about these feelings. Think about how much you wish it hadn't happened, or what your life was like before and what your life will be like from now on. Let yourself understand and feel the loss of what might have been. See, no matter what strong emotion is causing you to want to cry, think it through and allow it to take a prominent spot in your brain. Observe how much it's stressing you out and what a relief it would be if the problem would just go away. Let your emotions swell until you cry. Are you starting to feel your throat tighten a little? Don't swallow and force yourself to stop thinking about what's making you sad. Instead, let your emotions overcome you. Keep thinking about what you wish hadn't happened. When the tears start to flow, don't resist. Once you really start crying, it'll probably be hard to stop. Keep crying until you let it all out. You'll know when you're done. The average length of about crying, I'd say it's about 6 minutes. Cry. That's average. You could go on, but give it a good cry. Feel better. When you're finished crying, think about how you feel. If you're like most people, you'll find that your brain feels a bit freer of the emotion that was bogging you down. You might not feel joyful right away, but you probably feel calmer, less anxious, and ready to take on your problems. Hold on to that feeling and get into the habit of crying when you need to. It'll get easier with practice, right? There are studies out there that say 85% of women report feeling better after crying, while 73% of men do. Well, these are studies, but that just tells you something. It's definitely greater than 50%, so that means there's definite benefit in getting your cry on. And I don't care, men, women, all genders are included in this conversation. We could cry. Let it cry. Don't think this world, don't just, it's not just black or white. It's full of people from all genders, all backgrounds, and they can cry when they need to cry. And it's okay to cry. Too many of us are ashamed to cry. Or we feel embarrassed when we cry, and that's okay. All right? It's okay. If you don't feel good after crying, consider why. It can be hard to shake off years of being told that crying is weak, and so on. If you're embarrassed that you cry, try to remember that it's completely natural and it's healthy. Oh yeah, it's natural and healthy for you. All right, you know the stigmas out there. Men don't cry. Crying equals weakness, right? Crying is for babies. Isn't that what, you heard somebody say that crying is for babies. Don't cry. Well, I didn't say you got to cry in front of anybody, but you do have to do some crying. A lot of you only cry when you lose a loved one or someone suffering, you're crying, and that's okay too. But sometimes you got to cry for yourself. Forget what you learned about crying. Were you taught that brave people don't cry? Many people who were raised to hold it all inside have a lot of trouble expressing emotions as adults. And if you've had some tough upbringing, see, I was blessed in a lot of ways. I had a tough mother. She was strong, she was tough, but she showed love and she balanced it out. She was tough. She had jobs to do. And some of you have parents, some of you don't. But if you have someone in your life, they could be tough. And sometimes it's hard when you have a power structure in the house to exhibit those emotions. But I strongly suggest that if you're raising kids out there, that you need to know that if you're a tough bird, let's say you got two people in the home and you got a tough person and a more sympathetic person. At least one should be the balance where your children could come to and talk to, or at least express their fears and get a hug of the kids and get some attention. They say a lot of the children who are going through a lot of problems, the reason why they go through many problems is because you don't hug them enough. I don't care if they're adults. They're children, you don't hug them. If your kids get into too many problems, they're not getting enough hugs. That's an old wives' tale, but it's true. Think about it. Give your kid a hug. Right? How many of you give them a kiss and a hug when they're little kids, but then as they get older, it just dissipates. Right? For some reason, life, it dissipates. You don't give them a hug or a kiss, or not just say I love you, but give them a hug, give them a kiss. Say, look, you're going to make your mistakes. You're going to get on my last nerve. But you know what? I still love you, but I got to give you a hug once in a while. Make sure it's genuine. You don't be busting your kid in the bum and all of a sudden you want to give him a hug. Stop it. Okay? Be consistent. Don't be doing all that foolishness. Make sure you're consistent. Try to be the best person that you can. And when you make mistakes, acknowledge them. Okay? But, no. You know what I mean? You got to care. See, but crying is a necessary part of life that actually fosters good mental health. Crying can be an expression of sadness, pain, fear, joy, or just pure emotion. And it's a natural, healthy way to let those emotions run through our bodies. Men tend to have more trouble letting it all out than women do. It's true. And primarily it's because men are taught to keep their emotions to themselves. But crying is just as natural for men as it is for women, even if they do it less often. Girls and boys cry about the same until they reach the age of 12, I think it is. When they become adults, men cry 7 times a year on average, while women cry 47 times a year. Now, you do the math. Why is that? Who's making who cry? I don't know. But I got a feeling that these statistics out there are telling us something. All right? Crying is in no way a sign of weakness. It's an expression of emotion that has nothing to do with decision making. You can still take brave actions even if you cry in anticipation. Right? And I think a lot of people don't understand about our emotions. I told you, that's one thing we need to study in school more, about emotions. Isn't that funny? They don't even really teach us about that in school, right? About our emotions, right? We need to really incorporate emotional intelligence. The counselor is telling you right now, emotional intelligence, I want my listeners to learn a little bit about it and teach your children, teach your family members about emotional intelligence. It's going to enlighten you in so many different ways, right? But just keep in mind that it's a wonderful strategy, right? Just know that crying could help you process the emotions you're feeling and think more clearly about what's ahead. Yeah, sometimes you got a lot on your mind, a lot on your plate, and you're just so busy you can't even think. And a good cry will just be like, okay, now I'm resetting. I'm getting myself together. I can think now. There's just too much. What is it? What is it in me that's just driving me up the wall? I can't even focus. But sometimes you got to shed that weight. That's what I'm talking about. Shed the weight. Lighten the load so that you can push forward in your life. Because life is challenging. Life is hard. And if you expect it to be hard, it's going to be easy. But if you think it's going to be easy, it gets hard. See, that's the issue out there. It is a challenge. It can be wonderful challenges. You're going to have your ups and your downs. So you do need to know that sometimes you got to cry. You know, you don't need a reason why. Sometimes you got to cry. Right? Think about it. Crying is not for babies. Contrary to what you might have heard, children are more likely to cry because they have not yet internalized the idea that there's something wrong with it. But the need to cry does not go away when you grow up. People think it does. Grow up. Don't we tell our kids that? Grow up. Right? Why don't you grow up? But you don't tell no kid that to grow up when you see him crying. Let him feel it. Right? You got to see the benefits of crying. Crying is a way that humans release emotional tension. It's a natural bodily function that happens as a result of emotions building up and needed to be let out. Interestingly, though, humans are the only mammals that produce tears as a way to express emotion. Crying is a survival mechanism that helps us in so many different ways. Like, it relieves stress and lowers blood pressure. Over time, intense stress and high blood pressure can lead to severe medical problems. And crying helps to mitigate these issues. It's a way to remove toxins that build up when you're upset. Certain chemicals build up in your system when you're stressed, and crying helps to expel those tears, especially emotional tears, as opposed to tears formed as a result of irritation. It boosts your mood immediately afterward. This isn't just in people's heads. It's a scientific fact. When you cry, your level of manganese gets lower. The buildup of manganese leads to stress and anxiety. So crying is nature's way of easing emotional pain. I'm telling you right now, you need to learn about this crying. And that's why the counselor's talking to you about it, because it's widely misunderstood. Right? We judge each other so harshly that we don't need to. We need to get some understanding. Right? Figure out why you hold it all in. That's a big one. You ever get those people that are so hard, so cold, so mean, so tough, and we look at them and go, oh, they're just nasty. But see, people get nasty for a reason. Something might have happened to those people. They might not have had a good life. Somebody did something to them. Inherently, people are good. But then sometimes you get people who are so bad. Like, you ever have a supervisor, you're like, why is that person so nasty? You don't need to be mean to be in that position. They're so nasty, they're so cold, they're so cut off. They think it's got something to do with control. But it really doesn't. I think logically we got to look at the situation and go, that person's dealing with their own demons. I can't own that. But just think, they got that way for certain reasons. A lot of us ain't got time to investigate, but we do realize that person's hard. Why is that person so hard? Because a lot of them have built up things in their lives. Things that they can't change, whether they're divorced, whether they had bad relationship, whether their health is failing. Something's happened to those people. And I really would have to say, if it has been a long time since you've been able to cry, you may need to make a conscious effort to get to the point where you can release your emotions through tears. Do you harbor negative thoughts about crying? If so, try to change your views and see that there's nothing wrong with crying. It's good for you. Do you have trouble expressing feelings in general? Allowing yourself to cry will be a good start for you. Being able to process emotions in this way will help you be more emotional in general. When you push your feelings down and keep yourself from crying, those feelings don't go away. You may feel either angry or numb. Give yourself permission. And I mean that. Give yourself permission. Letting yourself cry is a way to take better care of yourself. It's a way to honor your feelings instead of denying them and pushing them down. When you cry, you're allowing yourself to be you. And I want you to be you. There's no you like you. Be you. Give yourself this emotional freedom, and it will have a positive effect on your mental health. If you're struggling to allow yourself to express emotion, imagine yourself as a child. Think about how you were free to be yourself then. Crying when you felt sad that you didn't have a fun day at the end of that day, or when you fell off your bike or scraped your knees. The events that made you cry as an adult will be different from those that made you burst into tears as a child, for sure. But you can still try to recapture that sense of emotional freedom. Cry when it hurts. Cry when somebody's insulting you. Don't cry all day just to cry. Cry when you really honestly have a built up thing inside of you that needs to let go. It may also help to think about how you treat others when they cry. Do you tell them to stop, to hold it in? When your best friend feels overcome and starts crying, you probably give them a hug and encourage them to let it all out. Try treating yourself with the same kindness. Rather than self-censoring, help yourself. Right? You got to be comfortable in your cry. And you got to know that you don't need to be judging other people when they cry. Right? Think about that. Look at old pictures. This is a surefire way to get the tears flowing if you're sad about a particular person, your family, or how much life has changed. Go through an old photo album. Pull up some pictures online. Allow yourself to gaze at each other for as long as you want. Remember the good times you had with the people in the pictures, or how much you loved a particular place. You know we've lost people, and sometimes we don't want to go. Why don't you want to go back and look at that picture? Why don't you want to go back into that room? Why don't you want to go back to that area where the incident happened? Because you're afraid of what? You might be afraid that you're going to cry. There's some of you that are crying, and it really depends what you're doing. There are ways that you can cry. Like if you watch a sad movie, it can be very cathartic to watch a movie with a plot so sad it makes you cry. Even if the actors are in a situation completely different from yours, watching them go through sad times and cry themselves might help turn on your tears. When you do start crying during a movie, let your thoughts turn to your situation so you can process your feelings about your own life. If you need suggestions for a sad movie to watch, I think I know a couple titles that might be helpful, like Steel Magnolias, Stella Dallas, Breaking the Waves, Blue Valentine, Rudy, The Green Mile, Schindler's List, Inside Out, Titanic, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, My Girl, Marley and Me, The Book Thief, Room, Romeo and Juliet, The Notebook, The Fault in Our Stars, The Giver, Up, Old Yeller, Where the Red Fern Grows, Hashi, Forrest Gump. These are just a few titles. And these titles, I'm telling you, they have an emotional component to it. And there are many titles out there. I know there's some emotional movies out there that a lot of you know about that you won't even watch because you know it's gonna bring on that emotion. And actually, sometimes if you watch some of those movies, you might actually get a little bit grounded. And I know this is going to sound a little bit odd to many of you. You might get a little bit grounded. You know, when you get a little bit tough, or your kids are doing this or saying that, and you don't like them for a lot of different reasons because they're acting the fool or this, that. Sometimes some of them movies, when you go through and you see what others have gone through, you might take a lighter approach to the way you're dealing with the situation. Crying isn't just the only influence, but you might have a different perspective. Okay? There's also other ways that you can cry. I find, like many other people, found music to be a very big influence when it comes to shedding those tears and alleviating those fears. Listen to emotional music. The right music can be the perfect way to help your emotions loom larger in your brain. One of the best ways to use music to help you cry is to pick an album or a CD or a song or an MP3, the song that you listen to at a different time in your life. Think about those ones, those songs you hear way back when, maybe when you were growing up and your mother or your father was listening to that music, and it just brings you back, right? That thing right there make you cry because the people might not be there anymore, but there could be just some feelings that it just gets inside of you, right? That's how music affects you, all right? Those things right there, what? You got to do it when you need to do it. There are some extremely sad songs out there, right? There's songs like, there's a number of artists, Gary Newman, Lost, there's beautiful sad songs out there. Hurt, there's the Commodores, there's the OJs, there's the Anita Bakers out there. I could go on and on, and the Patti LaBelle's. These are the, you know what I mean? The queens out there, they just can hit you with this music and it could just bring you into this feeling. I think we have so much music out there of all different artists, Otis Redding, Simple Plan, all that could be hard stuff. You know what I mean? It could be Celine Dion. It could be so many artists out there that have music that could just conjure up these emotions and help you release some of this foolishness. There's a million. And I'm telling you, there's even classical music that you could listen to that just, you know what? It could just stir up these emotions and open the gates, and next thing you know, you're free. But I do got to say something, though. And I'm a big person. I'm a big advocate when it comes to writing things, certain things down. And I do believe a lot of us don't write it. We type it, we text it. But I do believe there's still a beautiful part of writing in the world that needs to be acknowledged. Write down your feelings. Put a pen to paper and try to capture the essence of your feelings. You can start by writing down a description of the source of your emotion, describes the ins and outs of your breakup, discuss the last few months of your father's or mother's illness, write about how you lost your job at the start of the recession, then go deeper and write about how that event has changed your life and what you're feeling as your feelings. Let them come out on paper. Let it be something that you can look at and reflect on. Write down memories. This is a very good way to bring yourself to a point of tears if you need to. Write down some things that made you sad, right? And confide in a friend if you are comfortable with it. It can really help to talk to someone else, you know what I mean, from time to time, about what made you sad or is making you sad or angry or overwhelmed. Discuss your feelings until you have nothing left to talk about or cry about. You may even consider seeking help from a therapist if you find yourself needing to cry for extended periods of time. This may indicate a serious issue, such as unresolved grief or depression or some feelings that just are inside of you that you don't even understand. You don't understand about everything, people. Sometimes we don't even understand certain ways we behave in life. Whether it be positive or negative, sometimes, I'm telling you, just sometimes we gotta cry. You don't want too many months or years to go by because you just change as a person when you build up too much. And do everyone have to cry? Yes, at some point or the other. Sometimes you got to. I didn't say cry every time you turn around, but I'm saying at some point, you got to look at things. You got to take those feelings and you got to work it out and let it out. Some people get hard and they figure, oh, crying is not going to change. Forget all the whats and the whys and the reasons and the excuses for doing what you got to do. But sometimes you just do until you're through. Like, let it out. Well, I got to say that we had some good information presented today, and I think crying is it's a part of life, and I think we do need to acknowledge that we should not be ashamed to cry. And if you're not comfortable crying in front of people, find your place, but understand that there should be no shame to your game. There shouldn't be any shame to that game. There's a lot to cry about. We don't cry every day, of course. However, there may be times when you need to cry. I want you to be like the wise old bird and spread the word. There are a number of people out there that need to have a good cry. And you know the reason why. Just one reason why is the pandemic. It's okay to cry. But like I said, if you can't stop yourself, what you get going, give it about 5 or 6, 7 minutes. Have a cry. Have a good cry. But if you can't stop yourself, get some help. All right? And I mean some professional help. Look at it. Be no shame to your game. There's a lot. Sometimes things build up for years before you can release those tears. And some of you can't even release the tears. It's not for me. You ever hear those people? It's not for me. It ain't for anybody. But being human is for everyone. All right? So take care of yourself, people. We got to talk more about this stuff.